I'm going to go ahead and say I told you so. I was completely correct. Peanut the squirrel was marked for death and decapitation from the start, as rabies tests reveal tragic twist. For those who don't know, Peanut the squirrel is a prominent internet personality and squirrel owned by a man who rescued the squirrel as a baby. It was an indoor squirrel. One day, the government came and raided his home, took his squirrel and his raccoon, and executed them. Actually, it was an assassination. That's what I've long maintained. I'll tell you why. The initial story was that Peanut the squirrel was being checked upon because someone complained. The state came in, and when they went to see if these animals were here, whatever they were doing, a search warrant, the animal bit a man. Both the raccoon and squirrel allegedly bit somebody. Well, because of that, got to do a rabies test. So they killed the animals, performed the rabies test, and said, they ain't got rabies. Now, I said, no way. It was an assassination. And what is an assassination? So, you know, when you see it, typically assassination refers to a prominent individual who is killed for a political end. So it could be a powerful government official. It could be a celebrity. It could be a CEO. In this instance, Peanut the squirrel was a prominent internet personality. And the state decided they would end the life of this squirrel and a raccoon before even showing up at the house. I'll tell you why. This guy had 2 million followers on this account. The state did not want people to see a squirrel account and then go and try and take squirrels themselves to make social media videos that would get a lot of attention. They said it's illegal to have these animals. And this is my speculation. If you take the man's squirrel, he will sue and get it back. You have to kill it. And they planned that in advance. That is to say, the state planned the killing of a prominent internet personality with around 2 million followers in advance for a political reason. That's an assassination. The New York Post reports. Peanut the squirrel and Fred the raccoon did not have rabies, officials announced. As it was revealed, the animals were marked for death and decapitation days before they were seized by the state. The infamous internet Peanut and his raccoon pal were taken from an upstate New York home by force in a raid by state agents on October 30th and sparked outrage and accusations of government overreach as the pets were euthanized to test for rabies. Results are negative, Chemung County Executive Christopher Moss told the Post Tuesday. A newly revealed timeline shows state officials advised the county to euthanize the pet a full 7 days before they were taken from their unofficial caretaker, Mark Longo, on October 30th. Even though the Department of Environmental Conservation later said the squirrel bit an agent during the raid, sparking the need for a test. Now, did the squirrel bite somebody? It's possible. You go into a person's house and try and capture an animal, it might bite you. But look at this little doofy squirrel, huh? That squirrel didn't do nothing to nobody. So for what reason did they decide to raid a guy's animal sanctuary and take his animals? I'm sorry, dude. You chose to live in New York. I know. You didn't expect this to happen, but they straight up killed his 7-year-old squirrel, his pet, for no reason other than they don't want people to, well, they haven't given us a real reason, but I'm telling you, in my opinion, it's because they don't want people to take squirrels as pets. So they can't allow a radical like this to gain attention. Quote, wildlife cannot be confined like domestic animals. And if there was an exposure, the animals would need to be tested for rabies. The State Department of Health wrote the county on October 23rd, a message that all but sealed the animals' fates, as rabies tests require decapitation. So subjects' heads can be opened and their brains sampled. Days later, the DEC had laid their plans to raid his home, but the DEC was also already coordinating the animals' euthanizations with Elmira Animal Control, the county's timeline shows, directly contradicting their previous explanation that Peanut had prompted his own euthanization. I'm in utter shock, Longo told the Post when shown the timeline. I'd like to give you a proper statement, but for now, I'll just say, wow. Longo, who says he still hasn't received any word from officials about the animals, previously insisted the animals were rabies-free. The DEC set the operation in motion when it reached out to Chemung about 4 complaints that Longo is keeping the animals without a license in his home, according to the county. Quote, DEC is aware of an individual in the Chemung County who is known to illegally possess an adult gray squirrel and at least 4 young raccoons. They may also be in possession of other illegal wildlife species. The DEC said in a message to the county on October 22nd, "We would like to know if the health department would recommend these animals be tested for rabies as a precaution for human safety." That message prompted the county to reach out to the state health department, which then handed down the fatal rabies test recommendation. 8 days later, the DEC raided Longo's home, took the animals, and they were put down the same day. It was a lie. The state lied to everyone. Look at this. Animal decap request on 10/30/24 read, "A rabies report for Peanut and Fred also released by Chemin County. Before noon the next day, the animals' bodies were in a refrigerator at the rabies testing site. The fate of the bodies has not been revealed. Peanut's rabies report form did indicate he bit a wildlife operator on the thumb, but the timeline indicates the animals' deaths were planned before the bite. Before noon the next day, the animals' bodies were in a refrigerator. Peanut's rabies report," oh, they're just doubling. They do this sometimes. "Longo's Pine City home is a large rural property that operates as an animal rescue. Fred had recently been dropped on his doorstep in need of care, while Peanut had been living with Longo and his wife as a pet for at least 7 years. Peanut commanded a massive following on social media before his death. News of his fate outraged the public, while many decrying government overreach and overreaction. Quote, I would ask the public to allow the NYS Department of Environmental Conservation the amount of time necessary to complete their investigation so that many of the public's questions can be answered." Chemin County Executive Christopher Moss said in a statement, "There should be a suit. This should not be tolerated." Let's take a look at some of the comments, though. Forward writes, "Well, I don't believe that keeping animals from the wild as pets is a great idea. These animals were not a threat to anyone. The raid where the homeowners had to stand outside their own home was excessive. Amazingly, a dog from the White House bit several Secret Service agents, was not removed by the government, but transferred to other owners. People need to look at animals on a case-by-case basis." Man. Another example of overreach by the government that has exerted for decades. It was revealed fully during COVID. There you go. They want to control people. One person writes, in my state, an animal is confined for 10 days. If there's any question about whether it might have rabies, it was clear from the start that this was raw exercise of power. They did it because they could under cover of law. I'm going to tell you. This is a guy who's got millions of followers on an account. He's probably making a lot of money. It's going to breed copycats. The state says, we don't want it. This is the action they take. Now, some have speculated that this helped mobilize voters for Donald Trump. I'm willing to bet it did. Some libertarians, maybe. I don't know that it moved the needle all that much. But this became a major talking point for people on the right just before the election. And you actually had liberals on social media. Now hold on. Some of these posts were fake. People were claiming that Jen Rubin of the Washington Post was like, the MAGA squirrel deserved to die. I'm going to say outright that post is probably fake. It was a joke. It's a funny joke, not real. But I did see several myself as I began to investigate. Liberals weren't saying things like squirrels deserve to die. They were saying things like, why does anyone care about a squirrel? You shouldn't keep squirrels as pets. Sorry this happened, but this was your fault. They took the other side. Why? Because they have to. Because that is the nature of the Democratic Party and liberal voters right now. Whatever it is the right does, it's wrong, no matter what. The dude had a squirrel. It's one guy with one squirrel. We don't really care all that much. Why spend all of this money? What do you think it costs? Tens of thousands of dollars to go to this guy's house to kill a squirrel? So liberals take to social media and somehow find themselves in support of the state breaking into a guy's house and killing his animals because they hate Donald Trump that much and they want to make sure that everything the right does is wrong. This is the big problem right now with the right and the left, between the right and the left. The right's a big tent party. Conservatives will sit down with moderates and say, what up? It's not even an issue of whether or not you agree or disagree with liberals. It's an issue of whether you even agree with Republicans. So Nate Silver said, when he somewhat agrees with Republicans, Republicans are happy. If he doesn't completely agree with Democrats, they're angry. Let me add to that, Nate. If you completely agree with Democrats on everything, but then come out and say, oh, hey, there's a squirrel who died. That was bad. Now you're far right. So my point is, if the right wants anything and you say that's not such a bad idea, you are instantly anti-Democrat. It's not just about not agreeing with Democrats. It's that a large portion of their policy positions are simply Republicans are wrong no matter what. So if Trump came out, this is the joke. The joke from the Babylon Bee several years ago was Trump comes out in support of impeachment, forcing Democrats to oppose, because that's what they do. And they killed an effing squirrel over it. I'll wrap it up there. We got more segments coming up for you, so stick around, smash that like button, share the show with everyone you know, and we'll see you all in the next segment.